Americans really enjoy underdog sports stories throughout the course of history of sports, right? We look at Rocky Balboa, he underdog. We love the movie. We look at other sports teams. We look at the Giants who beat the Patriots, underdogs. We love underdog stories. Well, this past weekend in NASCAR, we saw a driver. Yes, he was a two-time champion, but kind of in an underdog season, comes up as the champion of the 2024 season. And what do we do as a fan base? We complain. Why is that? Let's chat together on why.
Powered by Riverside.
What's going on, everybody? And welcome into a brand new episode of the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Codd, this week. No Vince, but it'll be you and I solo this evening talking about the Phoenix Championship race weekend that just occurred. Guys, so heartbreaking. Let's restart that. I love this past weekend. I love championship weekend, but I also hate it at the same time. Why is that? Because that was our official last race of the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series schedule. We got to see a champion crown this past weekend. For me, I'm pretty excited on who won the championship. I know there's a lot of people and a lot of people in this fan base that did not like it. Again, it reminded me of an underdog story. Yes, two-time champion, now three-time champion. So how underdog is he? But this year specifically, he was the underdog. And he comes away with it and he prevails as the champion. A lot of people don't care for it. We're going to discuss with all of you on why you didn't like it. Again, we're live on YouTube right now, so feel free to pop in. If you're listening to us on live stream, feel free to come into our chat. We will love to interact with you as well. But loaded show on tap this evening with all of you, right? We're going to discuss clearly the Cup Series out in Phoenix. We're going to be talking a lot about the championship, but I really want to dive in with all of you. I asked a really good question, I thought, on Facebook to a lot of different Facebook groups. And I really felt like we got some really good answers. And it was in regards to the playoff system. Every single week, we either have fans that love the playoff system, like myself. I love it. I think it's fantastic. It mimics all other American sports. We also have a part of the fan base that completely hates the playoff system. Completely hates it. So I wanted to ask for my playoff system or playoff format sucks crowd, what do you do to change it? We'll be diving into those answers this evening. We'll be discussing that with you. Also, this evening, we got some J-Ski sponsorship updates I want to share with the audience. We'll go through that. And then, as I said, we will be very heavy this evening on the 2024 Cup Championship. We'll really just gloss over the Xfinity and the Craftsman truck. Unfortunately, we're going to be short on time tonight, so I just want to get to the meat and potatoes of tonight's episode. But before we get started, again, we are live on YouTube, so if you are listening to us, please feel free to follow us on our live stream. Love to interact with the audience. Would love to do that. And if you're listening, feel free to jump into our chat. Our chat is up and running. When I do get a segment break, I'll run over to the chat, see what we got going on in there. Follow us on Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, of course. All three. This episode will be up and running on all three of those service providers after tonight's episode. So sit back, relax. Let's chat together about what happened in Phoenix. But before we get started, a couple of show announcements. You guys all heard what we did in 2024. We had a few shows on the road, and I'm not going to lie, it was a fantastic year with all of you and the fans with the shows on the road. We did Daytona back in February. We did Martinsville a couple weeks ago. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see some of the people I wanted to get to see, but we'll definitely catch up. Would love to meet you in person as well. And of course, we had our Pocono tailgate, and then we did Darlington. We did a koozie giveaway. So I want to just mention to the audience, we will be doing a couple shows on the road next year. We're trying to get to 5 of them. I want to get to 5 races in 2025. But realistically, it's probably going to be 4. But we do have 2 tracks that are completely confirmed that the Broken Wheel Bearing podcast will be at. You've heard me talk about it ever since last year at Pocono. We will be officially back for the Pocono tailgate in 2025. That's official. That is confirmed. June 22nd, we'll be at the Tricky Triangle. Now, the other track that we have officially confirmed in 2025 is the Monster Mile. Yes, that is right. We will be back at Dover for the first time since 2019. This was well before I became a podcaster, and I was just a fan just like you. But Dover, again, being in the southeast corner of Pennsylvania, right outside Philadelphia, Dover is about probably maybe 2 hours from my house. It never appealed to me because every time I would buy tickets, it would always rain. Well, now they moved the race to July. Yes, this is going to be hot as hell, of course. But I'm super excited to do a live show from the Monster Mile. So that's right, Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast confirmations 2025 so far. We will be at Pocono and we will be at Dover in July. We will continue updating all of you on the other tracks. We got one that could be in confirmation in about a week or two, probably hopefully next episode. But for 2025, 2 shows on the road, Pocono and Dover so far, with more to come. So stay tuned on that. All right. Let's jump into some sponsorship updates. And we actually have a message in our live chat. Let's jump over to the live chat before we get into some sponsorship updates. And bear with me. Sorry about that. Okay, it's not popping up. So sorry. Okay. There we go. Sorry about that. Try Over Life, you checked in. Matt got that 3-chi hat on because Kyle Busch's 19-year record long win streak went up in smokes. Yes. Actually, that's a good point, Trioval. I really didn't think about it. We'll talk about Kyle Busch when we get into Phoenix, but yeah, that's a fair comparison. Wearing the 3-chi hat, unfortunately, Kyle Busch, yeah, his winless streak did go up in the smokes. Great comparison there. So let's jump into jski.com sponsorship updates this evening. A few on tap for all of you. Well, first things first, Matt McCall will not be back with Brad Keselowski as his crew chief in 2025. For me, kind of interesting news. I felt like that Matt McCall and Brad Keselowski, I think they did some good things together. I do feel like at times Matt McCall kind of held Brad back. They did seem like they were on the strategy terms a lot, but listen, RFK to me kind of took a step backwards in 2024. Yes, Brad got that win. Chris got that win at Watkins Glen, but I felt like going into 2024, these two, the dynamic duo, I expected a lot more considering that Chris got into the round of 8, Brad got to the round of 12. Both took a step back. I like the move in regards to Matt McCall to leave in RFK Racing. So I'm kind of hoping that Brad ends up bringing another analytical type of guy to get him over that top and get him more wins and into championship contention. So update number 1, Matt McCall will not return as Brad Keselowski's crew chief. Update number 2 this week from jski.com. Xfinity is going to be returning as the entitlement sponsor of the Xfinity Series for 2025, according to NASCAR. There was rumblings, there was some rumors that Xfinity could be leaving the title partner in NASCAR. Good to see Xfinity back. I think Xfinity is a cool sponsorship. That's one of my favorites, actually. So really happy to see Xfinity back into the fold of NASCAR. Update number 3, I think if you follow us on Facebook, I feel like if you follow anybody on Facebook, Bobby Allison ended up passing away this past week. I believe Trioval Life said it best on Facebook. That race up in heaven is starting to get more and more intense. And I think it made me, one of the thoughts I had when Bobby ended up dying or passing away this past week when we heard the news, finally gets to be back home with Davey Allison. So I'm really happy to hear. That's I guess the saving grace of the situation. Even though he passed away, he gets to go home to his son. So update number 3 was Bobby Allison ended up passing away. Update number 4. This one was a little interesting. There was rumors, there was rumblings, but according to jski.com, Denny Hamlin and FedEx will be ending after this season in 2024. It's a damn shame. Absolute damn shame. Another, to me, legacy sponsorship that personally I liked a lot. Whenever you think of Denny Hamlin, you think of FedEx. Whenever you think of NASCAR, you always saw the FedEx sponsorships. But unfortunately, we saw FedEx kind of reduce races over the last couple of years. We saw Mavis kind of come into the fold with Denny Hamlin. It was officially confirmed through a Facebook uh, Facebook message or Instagram message from Denny Hamlin that FedEx will no longer be with Denny Hamlin from 2025 moving forward. So that's another update. And one more from jski.com we have is Jimmy Johnson is planning on running in select races in 2025. So this one to me, nothing has been confirmed on what races he's going to be running, but I have to say this about Jimmy Johnson and running races at this point. Yes, he wants to get more information and more data for Legacy Motor Club about the next gen car. But can Jimmy Johnson just retire, please? I love Jimmy Johnson more than anybody. He's a 7-time champion. But at this point, you are now damaging. You're not. I mean, I don't want to say he's damaging his legacy, but it's starting to become a little bit of an embarrassment. Call it a day. Call it a career. You had everything. Just be an owner. I don't need to see Jimmy Johnson anymore on the track. I've seen enough, and for him to continue running races, it's not a good look. Now, the one thing I saw a stat. I forget what the source was, but they said that Cody Ware this year in 2024. Now, granted, they both ran select races. Cody Ware ended up having a higher average finish than Jimmy Johnson. Cody Ware. So for Jimmy, just please retire. So, all right. And the final update in the jski.com sponsorship updates, NASCAR will examine possible changes to the playoff format in 2025. And in this article update from jski.com, they will not be able to overhaul the playoff system until 2026 at the earliest. So for all my NASCAR playoff fans that hate the playoffs, well, changes might be coming. So all sponsorship updates, again, courtesy of jski.com. Follow them on Facebook, X, or by web like we do at www.jski.com. So, all right. Time to get into the championship weekend and the championship discussion. But before we do that, let's jump into the chat back again. And we go into Trioval Life, who's checking in again. Matt McCall is a great guy and amazing with cars, but he is not somebody that needs on a box. He has 4 career wins in 10 years as a crew chief with 6 years. With 6 years in charge of Kurt Busch and Brad Keselowski. Totally agree with that statement. I think Matt McCall is a good program builder, or a guy that you can kind of take the program from the ground, get him to a certain level, similar to what the Golden State Warriors were, right? They needed a coach like Mark Jackson. Mark Jackson comes in, he takes the Warriors to the NBA playoffs. They become a playoff team, but can't take them over the top. That's where I feel like Matt McCall is. I feel like Brad needs somebody that can elevate that 6 program a little bit better. Totally agree with that with Trioval. Trioval also checks in and he says, Bobby Allison got to go home and see his wife Judy and 2 sons, Davey and Clifford, as well as friends like Neil Bonnet and many others. Absolutely. Absolutely. Nay. Again, like I said, I think that's the biggest takeaway from this, right? Bobby Allison gets to go home. He gets to go home. And I think that was, when I read the news, yeah, I teared up. I did. Of course. Who won it? But I think the coolest thing is that he finally got to go home to his family and friends. So, again, if you're listening to us on YouTube during the show, feel free to chime in and chat. We'll read your answer on air during the episode as well when we get into a break where I can get to your answers. So, okay. So, last week, after Martinsville, this episode or this podcast is Facebook question of the week. I asked multiple groups on Facebook because I wanted to get a lot of good answers. And for me, I think if you listen to my shows, I am very pro NASCAR elimination playoffs. I am very pro that. The reason why, it mimics a lot of American pro sports. It mimics the NFL, mimics the NBA, mimics the MLB, NHL, etc. I like it, but a lot of people don't. And a lot of people continue complaining. So it was time for me to ask the question in these groups. And I told you guys, if you answer, we'll definitely read your answer on air. So, Facebook question of the week from last week: for my NASCAR playoff system sucks crowd, how do you fix the NASCAR playoff system? My only response or the only thing I had for the fans was, do not come back to us and say, well, reward consistency and bring back the old format. You know, I know that is not going to come back whatsoever. That does not bring drama. But again, best answers will be read on air. So we're going to start off with the first answer that we got about this question of the week. And that was from our own Broken Woodbury Podcast Facebook page. And it stems from Chris T. Skies. If I mispronounce that last name, I apologize. Feel free to reach out so I can get you credit. Chris ends up writing, first must be above the first must be above the top 20 in points to be eligible and can be retroactive. If you got to win in week 6, but we're 25th in the standings, ineligible currently. But week 26, you're at 16th, you're eligible for the playoffs. Next, instead of eliminating 4 drivers every 3 races, eliminate 8 after the first 5 races. Final 5 races, points reset to the total with all stage points, and just go from there. No more Final 4, top 8 duke it out over a 5-race stretch and still earn playoff and stage points. This one was pretty interesting. I liked what Chris said here. This whole argument for me came after Austin Dillon won at Richmond. And he said, well, I had to do what I had to do. I was on board to eliminate basically or implement a rule that said if you are 25th or higher in the points and you win, you're eligible for the playoffs. If you are below 25th, then you're out. Similar to what Chris said, you got to be retroactive. Now, if you climb above the certain amount of points, you get into the playoffs. If you go below the points, then you're out of the playoffs. I like that rule. I know a lot of people have been talking about one race shouldn't determine the championship, all that good stuff. Chris ended up saying on this one, he said, final 5 races, top 8 duke it out. Pretty interesting scenario. I like it. I would have to see what the playoff format looks like in general with this layout. Next, we would go over to, we asked this question into, bear with me. We asked this question into the NASCAR History Nextel to Now group chat. And we ended up getting a lot of responses out of this group. We're going to start off with Gage. Gage ended up saying, I grew up in the late Winston Cup era, and I thought the format from 04 to 2013 wasn't that bad. This one is just silly and nonsense, just my opinion, but at this point, this is what they want, drama and chaos for better or worse. I end up responding back to Gage. Respect the answer a ton. I prefer the current playoff system because I enjoy drama, but I can respect how you like the 04 to 2013 format. I think the 04 to 2013 format was good, but again, I like how, just like in any other sport, it doesn't matter how consistent you are in the regular season. You have to go into the playoffs and win games or races in NASCAR to win the championship. We also had Justin. He ended up he wrote to us. He said, bring back the chase like 04 through 06, but wins need to be worth more points. That way both wins and consistency can be rewarded rather than have a 25th place driver win Talladega and automatically get in. I understand, Justin. I completely understand that. You know, I feel like with the restrictor plate, we saw it this past year, Harrison Burton, right? Great story about him winning Daytona with his dad on the call. But the one thing that I did not like is that it was an automatic berth into the playoffs. Joey, he checked in with us and he said, first, have the field be 12 cars, not 16, and only do drivers in the top 20 in points like it used to be. Whoever wins the regular season championship automatically advances to the final race. Points reset then every 3 races. Whoever earns the most points in the first round goes to the final four. Second round, same thing. Points reset except for points earned for wins like the first round, and same thing for the second round. Again, most points earned in the third round goes to the final four. That way, everyone is in contention. Wins matter, consistency matters. Obviously, there is no win and you're in to the next round. Just got to earn as many points as possible. But win points should be the next, it should be like 10 extra points. That way, they mean more. This one is pretty interesting. I think the overall theme that we've gotten right now so far to date is eliminate the win and in to the next round, and wins just earn you more points. I do think that we need the reward again. I think we need the reward wins at a higher rate than anything. I think that wins are very important in the sport. The whole goal to go to the track is to win the damn race. And it's very difficult to sit there and look at a champion. I used 2003, Matt Kenseth as an example. In 2003, he had one win, very consistent driver. Ends up clinching the championship at Rockingham. Race 35 out of 36. Goes to Homestead, finishes 43rd. If you're a Matt Kenseth fan, there was nothing exciting about that. If you went to Homestead. I'll do a couple more here, and then we'll jump over to, we'll talk about the Phoenix race. Trenton ended up checking in with us, and he said, I wouldn't mind the original chase coming back, but reward points for wins, stage wins, and where they finish in regular season point standings. But no win and you're in, no rounds, just 10 races straight up with playoff points. Again, I feel like we're just, for that one, Trent, it's a decent answer. I just feel like you're reinventing the wheel with what we did from 04 to 2013. And then let's get to Cody from NASCAR Racing Podcast. Great podcast, by the way. Check him out. Him and Rod do a great job. If you're a big gambler, incredible job. Cody checked in. He said, doesn't matter what you do. No matter what, they won't be happy. Totally agree with what Cody said there. I feel like you give people an opportunity to change something. What they're going to end up doing is they're just going to continue complaining no matter what it is. You're not going to make everyone in the fan base happy. Now, thank you for everyone that volunteered answers. I hope I got to as many good answers as possible. We did have a lot of answers come back to us with the old, let's go back to the old Winston Cup format. For me, and my argument to this was, listen, I was younger than a lot of the older NASCAR fans. I do remember the Winston Cup format. 03 is the one that sticks to my head because of Matt Kenseth. That was last year, so I was about 10 years old when that happened. For me, when I look at the old Winston Cup format, yes, you're rewarded consistency, but what other sport in this country rewards consistency? None. You have to win in order to win a championship, and that's where I think NASCAR did it right. My only change, I want to change or overhaul the whole format. Now, granted, it's very difficult when Brad Keselowski is quote tweeting Auto Racing Analytics last week and literally saying we need to reamp the whole entire format because of what happened with Christopher Bell at Martinsville and all that type of stuff. Listen, you don't need to change the format. The format's beautiful. It's entertaining. It is drama-filled. The only thing I would tweak, again, I would prefer us to mimic more American sports in this country. And I prefer to see whoever wins the regular season points championship. This year it would have been Tyler Reddick. I would like to see them get a first round bye. Well, how far do we go on the first round bye? Okay, he wins the regular season points championship. I would not give him an automatic bid into the Final Four. I want it. But I would give him a bid to the round of 8. I would give him a first round, or basically it would be a first 2-round bye. You win the regular season points championship, you get an automatic bid into the round of 8. Now, if the regular season points champion does not win the most amount of races, so in this situation this year, we had Kyle Larson win the most amount of races with 6 in the regular, or 6 this year, and then we had Tyler Reddick in the regular season champion. Those two automatically get that first 2-round bye. So those two will automatically lock themselves into the final 8. I still need to see the guys race, and I still need to see them earn their opportunity to get to the round of 4. They can't just automatically go to the round of 4 because yes, we rewarded consistency, but then all of a sudden now we got a driver that's completely locked in. He doesn't have to do anything. He could just sit around and just work on his Phoenix car the whole entire playoffs. I still need to see that driver go to the track and still compete at a high level. So I believe that in this playoff format, which I love, the only tweak I would do is that whoever wins the regular season points championship gets a bye all the way until the final 8. And if the regular season champion does not win the highest amount of races, whoever wins the highest amount of races in that season, they get a bye as well. Now, if the regular season points champion ends up winning the most amount of races in the regular season, then there's only one bye. That is it. I don't need to see all these drivers get buys and all that type of stuff. You're putting back what everyone's complaining. We put emphasis into the regular season again with the regular season points championship. And also we have drivers going for wins at this point. So that's what I would do. That's what I would tweak. But again, I don't want to see them completely eliminate anything that they have in place. My last point on this topic. I heard a lot of people sit there and say, I don't want to see NASCAR have a regular or one race for their championship. I don't want to see that. But at the same time, how do you solve that? Because NASCAR is not going to run at the same track 3 times in a row to determine the championship. They're just not. So for me, I would prefer to see one racetrack a year determine the championship, which we already have, like we saw this past week at Phoenix. But the one thing I would do is I would mimic it almost like the NFL. The championship race, similar to the Super Bowl, that is NASCAR. I know the Daytona 500 is classified as NASCAR Super Bowl. And it's a beautiful, great. It's one of the best tracks I've ever been to. But the point is, in order to crown a champion, that is our Super Bowl. So I would personally rotate the championship 4 race every 4 years at 4 different tracks. And what tracks would those be? 1, Homestead. Homestead gets a championship playoff or a championship race date. That's my first race in the round or in the shuffle of 4, as you would call it. Second, I would do Phoenix. But if Phoenix is in it for the championship, then Phoenix loses a second date because I don't want to see tracks have 2 dates and run a championship. If you only get 1 date if you have the championship. So I would say Homestead, I would say Phoenix. Then I would sit there and I would look at, well, let's see what Southern California is going to offer. Let's see if this new Fontana track comes up. I would love to see a championship race at Fontana. And then my 4th in the rotation would be Martinsville. So the 4 tracks I would rotate every 4 years would be Martinsville, Homestead, Phoenix, and whatever track Fontana ends up building. So a lot of great answers. Again, thank you so much for everyone that participated. I know it's a very sensitive topic with everybody in this community. A lot of people do not like the NASCAR playoffs, and a lot of people do like the NASCAR playoffs. So it's a 50-50 split on the fan base. So I appreciate everyone being involved. Again, follow us on Facebook, the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. If you are on our YouTube live chat, feel free to drop a chat. Let us know what's going on. We want to hear your answer as quick as possible. That's the best way to get us, or Facebook, the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. So thanks again, everyone who participated. All right, so speaking of championship 4, let's get into Phoenix. Let's talk about Phoenix a little bit. So 1, our champion is not really liked. A lot of people do not like the champion, is what I gathered after the checkered flags dropped at Phoenix on Sunday. Before we get into the Cup, though, Justin Allgaier ended up winning the Xfinity Series championship. Great moment. I'm a big Allgaier fan. I just, there's something about career journeymans, I guess you can say, that have been in the Cup, fell back into the Xfinity, has success in the Xfinity. Elliott Sadler was one of them. Just good opportunities all around. I really enjoyed seeing Justin Allgaier hold the championship trophy. out in Phoenix. I know he didn't win the race. Riley Herbst ended up winning, but then we had Ty Majeski on Friday night win the Truck Series. So those were our, and we'll talk about the lower level series later in the off season because, like I said, I wanted to emphasize solely on Cup tonight. But again, yeah, a lot of people were not pleased with our Cup Series champion. And that was one Joey Logano. So I wanted to read a tweet, and I love the guys at Auto Racing Analytics. Auto Racing, they ended up tweeting out, and follow them on Twitter because the data that they put out is mind-boggling. It's insane. Auto Racing Analytics ended up tweeting out, statistically, Joey Logano in 2024 was the 10th fastest driver, 22nd best restarter, 31st most efficient passer, and Joey Logano is the champion. Congrats to Joey Logano on a fantastic season and rising to the occasion. They were the best by the system, but is that who you want to see as champion of the sport? And this is where I'm going to disagree with him. And for me, I get it. And as we were just talking, how do you revamp this whole entire playoff system, all that type of stuff? The system, to me, as I said multiple times, it's a beautiful playoff. It provides drama. It provides, adversity. And that's something that we all love in this country, right? We love watching sports to watch teams face adversity to fight for a champion. I posted this question in the podcast, or in the NASCAR gambling podcast, last night. Every other sport in this country, we all get excited about the underdogs. We always get excited about it. In the NCAA, it was Chicago Loyola, 2018? They lost to Villanova. I'm a Villanova fan. That's why I remember that. Sister Jean was at the court. Everyone fell in love with that story. The New York Giants beat the New England Patriots multiple times. Everybody outside New England loved that story. We root for underdogs all the time. And where I'm going to apply Auto Racing Analytics to stats. Joey Logano this year, yes, he's a 2-time champion. Well, now 3-time, excuse me. But let's apply what Joey Logano did this year. And the way I look at it is Joey Logano was an underdog going into the playoffs. And every time that Joey Logano had his back against the wall and needed to come up clutch, he did. First race of the 2024 playoffs, we saw him in Atlanta. Yeah, I mean, listen, he was not ranked. He was not seated very well in this playoffs. Goes down there and wins. Goes down there, wins the race, advances. Round of 12. I can't fault Joey Logano because Alex Bowman had a disqualification. I can't fault him. And we got a lot of answers about that on the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast Facebook page. A lot of people, oh man, he should be thanking Alex Bowman. But you know what though? Like, that's Alex Bowman, and that is on Hendrick Motorsports. That's their fault. I'm not going to blame Joey Logano. Joey Logano actually had a good strategy. He's not a good road course racer at this point in his career, but he had a good enough strategy to put him in a good enough position to be able to advance. Now, Reddick came back from wrecking, ends up coming through the field. Reddick advances, same with Bowman. Well, guess what? Bowman ends up getting disqualified for a weight issue on the car. It's not Joey Logano's fault. Again, he did enough to put himself in a position. And what does Joey Logano do? In the next round, in the round of 8, he ends up taking care of business. Great strategy call by Paul Wolfe. Great strategy call by Joey Logano. Ends up running on tires and gets past Christopher Bell. Now, granted, his strategy knocked Bell out of the round of 4. I understand that the system set him up, but you don't hate the player, hate the game. Joey Logano did what he was asked, plus more, because he had bad seating. If you think that Joey Logano didn't go into the 2024 playoffs going, I'm going to need to win more than one race, you're nuts. Then he goes to Phoenix. Okay, well, whoever wins the race, the rules are whoever wins the race, he's the champion. And that's what happened. Joey Logano went to Phoenix and won the championship. Now, Blaney came up very hard on him. couldn't close the gap more than 0.3 tenths of a second. But Joey Logano, every single round, did what he was asked to do. And as an athlete, as a former athlete myself, I want to see the best of the best and how they fight and through adversity. I want to see when their back is against the wall, when their equipment is not working, who is the one that can sit there and put themselves in a position to put a 17th place car into the top 5? Who can take a top 7 car and put it in victory lane? And that's what Joey Logano did. I told you going into last weekend, it does not, stats, throw them out. It doesn't matter. Yes, I understand Joey Logano has, let's read his stats according to NASCAR.com. His 2024 over final stats. Yes, he's the champion, right? His average finish this year was a 17.11. I get it. He led 414 laps. He's only had 7 top 5s, 13 top 10s, but he comes away with 4 wins. At the end of the day, he's got 4 wins and he's got the championship. I don't know what else we have to do to crucify our champion. Yes, NASCAR is not like what it was in 1998. He was given an opportunity in a system and he took a care of business. Because as a 2-time champion in the sport, he knew how to overcome adversity to capture his 3rd championship. And for me, not just as this 3rd championship, honestly, was impressive by Joey Logano. Because let's call it as is. Logano, to me, was out of the picture. He was great at Daytona, got into an early wreck in Atlanta, and then completely was non-existent all through the spring and early summer stretch, right? I mean, they went to New Hampshire. I mean, there was like, well, how do we get, maybe this is the Logano race. He's below the cut line. Well, guess what happened? He wins Nashville, clinches his ticket, gets into the playoffs. And again, he wins in the playoffs. Atlanta did enough to put himself in a position for Bowman's mistake for him to go into the next round. And he knows it. Paul Wolf knows it. If they don't pull that strategy, they're not sniffing the Final Four. They pulled off the strategy and it prevailed. There's also a lot of drivers that have tried different strategies and it failed. For Paul Wolf and Joey Logano, it worked. And then he went to Phoenix, won the game, race, won the championship. Is he the worst champion of all time based off stats? Probably. But when we look at the chapters and the history books of NASCAR, outside us analytic computer nerds like myself, Grant over at Auto Racing Analytics, a couple of the beat writers, no one's going to care. They care in the moment. They're not going to care 10 years from now. No one's going to look back on it and go, wow, Joey Logano had a 17.11 average finish. What they're going to sit there and say is, oh my God, do you remember what Joey Logano did in the 2024 playoffs? The dude was basically a wounded wolf going into the playoffs. And he comes up clutch. To me, what Joey Logano did and what Grant over at Auto Racing Analytics did, essentially all those stats that he provided me makes me appreciate Joey Logano's championship even more. He did not have the best Penske car all throughout the season. He didn't have the best equipment. And he still found a way. And I think that should scare you. Because all the stats and data got thrown out the window. And he still overcame. let's talk about the remaining Final Four drivers after Joey Logano. And next one up was Ryan Blaney, who Joey Logano's teammate, right? I mean, God, Ryan Blaney over the last couple weeks has absolutely turned into a complete monster of a driver. Yes, he struggled at Vegas, goes to Homestead, literally gets passed on the last lap by Tyler Reddick, ends up going to Martinsville, back against the wall to overcome adversity, ends up winning that race, and advances himself into the Final Four. Now, at Phoenix, all the numbers were pointing into Ryan Blaney's favor, except for his qualifying effort, which I don't understand what happened, but whatever. Practice times, practice speeds, top of the charts. It looked like it could be a total Ryan Blaney show out in Phoenix on Sunday. But instead, his teammate prevailed. He couldn't close the gap to any more than 0.3 tenths of a second. Ryan Blaney was very good the last couple weeks of the NASCAR Cup Series. Another driver who was below the cut line entering the round of 8 put himself in position to get above the cut line by the win. Had a ton of speed. I honestly thought we were going to be talking about Ryan Blaney as a back-to-back champion. But instead we didn't. And we got Logano, but that's okay. Ryan Blaney was super impressive. Like I said, it just came up so short. And you're just like, oh my God. Because even the booth at NBC, they're just like, we're going to have a teammate on teammate action on the last pass of the 2024 season, right? They're gonna fight for the championship, or they're gearing us up. And Ryan Blaney just could not get to Joey Logano. He just couldn't get to Logano. And for me, I was talking to friends of mine, fans, all that type of stuff, and I said what probably ended up happening with Blaney, and again, that final march to get to Logano, he was putting down track times. He was putting down a lot of speed that, quite frankly, I think that after a certain amount of laps, both Logano and Blaney's tires basically evened out. And I think that's what ended up screwing Blaney at the end. He got there, but before he got there, he was putting down some hard laps. A lot of tire wear. And unfortunately was unable to get up to Joey Logano. It was, again, though, it was a very impressive run for Ryan Blaney in the 2024 Cup Series. Again, a driver that came below the cut line in the round of 8, goes to Martinsville, ends up, and not even Martinsville, Homestead, almost wins Homestead, gets passed by Tyler Reddick, goes to Martinsville, wins the race, goes in for a fighting chance for his second Cup championship. Ryan Blaney's final stats in the 2024 season. He had a 15.2 average finish with 7 DNFs, 12 top 5s, 18 top 10s, 3 wins in 36 races. Now, there was a stat that went out there, and again, I should have reposted it when I had it. Someone ran down all the mileage that each driver ran in the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series season. And Ryan Blaney was ranked dead last in the amount of miles ran in the 2024 season. For him to even sniff the championship 4 with 7 DNFs is remarkable. And everyone's going to complain. They're going to be like, well, Kyle Larson wasn't in the championship 4 and all that type of stuff. Well, listen, Kyle Larson, yeah, he won 6 races. But, the DNFs killed him. Him being impatient around Reddick and Homestead killed Kyle Larson's championship 4 hopes. That is what killed it. Ryan Blaney was able to overcome 7 DNFs because he was patient enough to let his car come to him at Martinsville. And for him to win, to go to Phoenix. Driver number 2, Ryan Blaney. Let's get to driver number 3. There was a lot of controversy coming out of this one, coming out of Martinsville, and that was William Byron. So, to recap this one on Byron. William Byron ended up making the Final Four. Christopher Bell got disqualified after the fake melon, as I called it last week on the show. They said it was a safety violation by NASCAR at Martinsville, right? So Bell ends up getting eliminated. Byron goes in. Now, a lot of penalties came out after William Byron came into the championship 4. Austin Dillon got in trouble. Ross Chastain got in trouble because they felt like there was a lot of race manipulation by Chevrolet to get William Byron into this championship 4 because both Dillon and Chastain were not passing William Byron. William Byron did make it into the championship 4, but like I said, it came with a lot of controversy. William Byron, to me, was pretty much, yeah, he had a shot. It really just didn't, I just never felt like, from the start of this weekend till the Checkered Flag, he was the one that I probably was the least impressed with. And I will give them credit. Him and Rudy Fugle did an outstanding strategy with tires. And what screwed that up was there was a caution. I remember texting, I think it was my dad, and he texted me, he goes, William Byron, race winning strategy, that's probably going to win the race. And then 2 laps later, Zane Smith goes around, bunches everybody up. Joey Logano on fresh tires, comes down pit road, fresh tires, guess what? Gets right around William Byron, takes off. William Byron, to me, was a very interesting driver in 2024, right? We saw him win the Daytona 500, which is, listen, made the Final Four last year, had a breakout season in 2023, comes in 2024, wins the Daytona 500, had that really, really good stretch in the beginning of the season. Wins the 500, ends up winning the Circuit of the America, ends up winning Martinsville over his teammate Chase Elliott. But then kind of became, as I called him last week, Josh Allen of NASCAR. An elite superstar driver, player like Josh Allen, that had a lot of tendencies and a lot of flaws. And that's what ended up happening with William Byron in 2024. He had 21 top 10s. He had 13 top 5s. Average finish 12.9. Again, there was a lot of inconsistency in a stretch, right? There was times where he was one of those drivers that when he got hot, he got really hot, scorching hot. But when he cooled off, he had a couple week stretch where he cooled off and it became, ugh. But then the playoff, backtrack. When we entered the playoffs, he was my upset pick in the 2024 playoffs. I told Vince, I said, who's your upset driver that could be out of the playoffs? And I said William Byron because of the inconsistencies going into the playoffs. Something clicked. He almost missed the round of 12, but then something clicked in the round of 12 that extended him into the Final Four. Like I said, him and Rudy Fugle almost pulled the race winning strategy off. The only thing that screwed him was a Zane Smith caution. And unfortunately, that's all she wrote for William Byron in 2024. I expect big things out of the 24 team. Rudy Fugle, William Byron in what now? It's going to be year 4 together, right? They started in 2021, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, year 5, excuse me. Year 5, I expect big things out of Rudy Fugle and William Byron. So next year. And I'm excited to see what they're going to be able to do. But this year, if they're going to learn anything, yes, they got the 3 wins. That's great. Average finish of 12.9. But his average start was 9.5. So with his average start to average finish, he's losing nearly 3 spots. Unfortunately, that's not going to cut it. Driver number 3, William Byron. And then the final driver of the championship 4 weekend out in Phoenix was the driver of the 45, Tyler Reddick. So Tyler Reddick had a very, very interesting season. It was almost a story of 2 chapters. Regular season, Tyler Reddick was Started off the season pretty good, then got scorching hot over that summer stretch, which really just propelled him into the regular season championship. After that win at Michigan, that pretty much put him ahead of Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson for the regular season championship. Ends up winning the regular season championship at Darlington, and then finishes top 10 in Atlanta. Okay, good. And then completely falls apart. Completely falls apart in the playoffs. Going into Homestead, his playoff average finish was 20.7. Then at Homestead, he pulls off a strategy, which I think everybody on TV basically said, yeah, there's no way that's going to work. Gets the caution at the right time because of the impatience of Kyle Larson. Puts himself in the position, pulls off a game-winning shot in reference to Michael Jordan. Ends up pulling off the game-winning shot, picks up win number 3 of 2024, ends up getting himself into the championship 4. To me, Tyler Reddick was probably the most interesting driver out of the 4 I just mentioned. William Byron, we saw in 2023 go from great to elite. Joey Logano, we already know, is an elite driver. Ryan Blaney we know that, 2023 was kind of a breakout season with his championship. Tyler Reddick, to me, he made the transition last year over to 23XI, ends up winning the Circuits of the America race, then ends up winning Kansas. This year, it was like, what do we expect from the 45? This is now year 2 with 23XI and Tyler Reddick. How far can this team go? Started the season off pretty good. Ended up winning Talladega, so clinched his ticket there. But then really transformed into this incredible, almost elite driver. After him and Chris Buescher ended up wrecking at Darlington. If you look at Darlington, when him and Chris Buescher ended up wrecking, when Buescher almost knocked him out, and we were at that track, I saw it right in front of me. Tyler Reddick went on this monstrous tear all through the summer with his worst finish happening at Iowa. And then it propelled him into an elite category. He went really blazing into Michigan, won Michigan. And I remember after Pocono, I said, Tyler Reddick, to me, right now, gun to the head, after Pocono on an episode, I said Tyler Reddick is going to be your 2024 champion. Now, I was wrong. He wasn't. But it definitely, I feel like leaving 2024 after the Checkered Flag flew on this chapter, Tyler Reddick is now becoming that next elite superstar that I think we were all anticipating. Toyota, next year's going to be year 3 with him in Toyota, 23XI, depending everything that's going on behind the scenes with the lawsuit, which we'll talk about on the next episode when we have time. But for me, Tyler Reddick looks like he's becoming that elite driver we've all been waiting for. That Dale Jr. was excited about. That Richard Childress was excited about. I'm excited to see what this is going to transcend to, depending on the lawsuits that are happening. Tyler Reddick's final 2024 stats are this: 13.1 average finish, 597 laps led, 4 DNFs, 13 top 5s, 21 top 10s, 3 wins in 36 races. He made his first championship 4 appearance. So the one takeaway, and after we finish off with our Phoenix championship weekend discussion, the one takeaway I definitely want to say is this, right? No matter what happened on Sunday, we were always going to have people complaining because it wasn't their driver that won the championship. But to neglect what Joey Logano and these 4 drivers did to get to the championship 4 should not be overlooked. Each one of those drivers struggled in the 2024 playoffs. Each driver stepped up to the plate. Each driver took that next step above his competitors. For Logano, who's holding the championship trophy in 2024, he's had to overcome adversity 3 times. By winning Atlanta, by putting himself in position in case Alex Bowman got disqualified, winning Las Vegas, and then winning Phoenix. So, 4 times. Tyler Reddick did not have an easy go-around in this playoffs. At all. Struggled a lot of the time. Struggled. Goes to Homestead. Back against his wall. It's got to hit the game-winning 3. Nails it. Gets to the Final Four. William Byron did not start these 2024 playoffs hot at all. Struggled in the first round. Ended up getting himself into position to advance into the round 12. Started heating up. Then he gets to Martinsville. For the longest time. At the end of the race. We thought it was Christopher Bell. And then Seabell got disqualified. William Byron got in because of a safety violation. And then finally Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney got into the round of 8. Below the cut line. Ends up winning Martinsville. But the week before at Homestead, almost pulled off the win after wrecking at Las Vegas. So each one of these drivers faced adversity. So for all the people, and again, I understand the statistics. I'm a stat guy, analytics guy, all that type of stuff. For all the people that are complaining that these 4 drivers didn't deserve it because they didn't win all these races, all that type of stuff, they did. Probably more, I think it's, and again, my final point is, on all 4 of them, I think it's more impressive on what they did in 2024 based off statistics, based off average finishes, based off the average finish in the playoff run. I love my guys at Auto Racing Analytics, but sitting there telling me all that stats, again, that's more impressive on Logano's championship because of how bad he was. It's impressive to me that at one point we were talking about Tyler Reddick, and I brought up a Facebook question, like, is winning the regular season points championship worth it? Because Reddick was struggling. And it was, because it got him into positions to eventually go win the or get himself into the Final Four. Ryan Blaney, 18.8 after Vegas, 16.7 going into Martinsville. Ends up, throw the stats out the window in the 2024 playoffs. Throw them out. Ends up winning the race. Again, it's more impressive when you look at the stats, and that's why I'm an analytics guy. Because I love the stats and seeing how off sometimes these stats can be and misleading they can be. If the data told you every single year what was going to happen, then Denny Hamlin probably wins 6 championships in the last 10 years. Him and Chris Gabehart are so analytical, but that's not how it works. The moral of tonight's episode, too, as we take the checkered flags on 2024, is that I'm never counting out Ford ever again. I think the first 13 weeks, Vince and I are talking about when's Ford getting there, when's Ford getting there, when's Ford getting there, when's Ford going to be back. Well, they almost won Kansas. Brad wins Darlington. And here they are again. Ford now has 3 straight championships in the NASCAR Cup Series. 22, 23, 24. So I don't give 2 flying shits. I'm going to echo Jeff Burton on this. I don't care what Ford does because we know one of them is going to end up in the championship 4. And number 2, I'm so excited to dive even more into analytics to justify our power rankings on next episode, but then also in 2025 to see where we're all, or how off they are. Folks, that's going to bring us to the checkered flag tonight on the 2024 season. Damn. Sorry. It hits me. It definitely hits me. Checkered flag on tonight, or on not just tonight's episode, but the 2024 Cup Series season. I'm going to have a couple fun questions going out to the audience tonight. One question of the week. I want to hear. I'm going to give 2 questions a week. No Spotify polls. 2 questions of the week, and that's going to be this. One, what was your favorite moments of the 2024 Cup Series season? I want to hear from you. What was your favorite moments from the 2024 Cup Series season? And number two, the second Facebook question of the week. What driver disappointed you the most? And what driver do you expect to have better? What driver do you expect to be better in 2025? I'm going to say this before we close off and get into thank yous. One thing of note, I think a lot of people, and I know Trioval said it or messaged us in the live stream chat. He said it best. He goes, so I'm wearing a Kyle Busch 3-Chi hat. Kyle Busch 19 season winning streak officially over. So now the hunt is on when he will break that winless streak. So Kyle Busch now 19 years in a row he won a race. He didn't get the 20. Ends up not winning a race in 2024. I'm going to expect bigger expectations out of the 8 car in 2025. So with all that being said, let me get into some thank yous this evening. Listen, we are going to be dropping from a once a week episode now down to a bi-weekly episode as we get into the off season. So right now, stay tuned to our Facebook page, the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast, because I'm contemplating doing an episode next week, the 19th or the 20th, so I can avoid Thanksgiving. But if I can't get around next week just because it's the off season, we'll definitely be having an episode within the next 2 weeks. It will be our power ranking episode from 2024. So stay tuned to our Facebook page, the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast, and we'll get those episodes up and running. We'll get those episode lineups for you and hopefully the topics. So you can join us on the live chat and talk with us as well through the live chat. So follow us on Facebook, the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. That's step number 1. There's a lot of thank yous I have to say this year for making this season absolutely remarkable. And there's a lot of people behind the scenes that make this show very successful. It's just not me. I'm just a race fan with a bike. I really am. I do this because I have passion. I do this because I love talking to fans of NASCAR. And I really do pride myself on being the southeast corner of Pennsylvania's voice in NASCAR. I do. I said it last week. Major shout out, major thank you to, first of all, my father, Jack Hod. He ended up, guy was a warrior this year with me. In regards to being on the shows on the road, being at almost actually every race that I went to, he was there with me to make sure we had koozies, make sure we had giveaways, make sure that I had all my podcast equipment. I said a story last week, and I really echoed it. I will echo it again this week. My favorite memory probably of this season with him was the excitement that he had at Daytona. And I was on air. This when we were not using Riverside. Thank you, Riverside. When we were on air, he thought I was actually live, but I wasn't. I was just recording an episode from the track. And he was so excited to get that information to me about the ARCA race going Friday night instead of Saturday because of impending rain. So he was so excited, and him and I shared a hotel room together for a couple of days. So, and then we drove after the 500. We drove straight back up to Pennsylvania, and I'll always remember that trip because when we were in South Carolina, I think he was sleeping. It was late at night. He was sleeping. I'm like, I'm bored. We were south of Florence, and he looks over to me. He wakes up out of a dead sleep, and he goes, "You're like 27 miles till empty. Can you get gas?" So, point of the story was we end up getting gas, but we end up getting back to Pennsylvania safely. We ended up pulling off in North Carolina. I fell asleep. I had to sleep in a truck stop, but really big shout out to him. He, like I said, he was the massive, bread and butter, the glue that basically held me together. Because listen, guys, I know I do stutter a little bit. I get really nervous to sometimes do these shows because I want to make sure you, the listener, have a good perspective. I don't want to just be a voice of NASCAR. I want to be a reason of NASCAR. I want to be a reason to very intelligent, passionate fans. I pride myself on our fan base that we have at the Broken Wheel Bearing podcast because you guys, every interaction I have with you, you guys are some of the most passionate, caring, awesome sports fans I've ever met in my entire life, considering the fact I'm an Eagles fan and a Philadelphia sports fan. You guys top Philadelphia sports. And I want to be that voice of reasoning. I want to be that guy that basically goes, you know what, damn, that's a conversation I can have in a bar, but that is an awesome conversation. I love that guy. So I do get nervous, and him being there, my dad, every single shows on the road, all that type of stuff. I can't thank him enough because he's that support system that I need to make sure you guys get a great show and a prideful show that we can all gather around. So that's the first thank you to my father, Jack Cod. Second thank you, Riverside. Beautiful studio. This has been absolutely an incredible pleasure to do. If you're looking to start a podcast, Riverside is where it's at. They're linked up through Spotify for podcasters. Once you start up a podcast, Spotify for podcasters, you click on the link, it sends you to Riverside, and it gives you this beautiful studio. So, Riverside, we want to thank you for coming up for Vince and I in the middle of the season and absolutely having a fantastic, fantastic studio. Third, thank you, Vince Picciotti. Couldn't be with me tonight. Actually, couldn't be with me the last couple of weeks. He just had a wedding a couple of weeks ago up in Pennsylvania. Vince, if you're listening to me tonight, man, it has been an absolute honor with you as my co-host this year in 2024. And rightfully so, we're going to continue putting out some incredible episodes. I can't thank you enough with the intelligence and the information you bring and the perspective you bring to the table as well. It's been a ball. It's been a blast. Cannot wait to get you back on air. Final thank you is going to be to all of you tonight, the fan. A lot of names I definitely could give special shout outs to, and I'm going to try to do them pretty quickly, right? Trioval Life always brings great insight, great information, all that type of stuff. I appreciate it, bud. Thank you so much. Jake Belts, another loyal listener of mine. He's always been there for us. Great fan, intelligent guy. Supports us from the start to finish. Dave Martin, another loyal listener. Another guy that has brought up a lot of great points. Brian Martin, thank you so much for the artwork for this year's podcast. I can't thank you enough for that. Ryan Belts, you bring up a lot of great questions to us that we can bring on air. Neil Hayes. Neil, it's been an absolute pleasure and an absolute blast to get to meet you at Darlington. You are one of the people that I continue saying, I can't thank you enough for meeting you because it not just does it expand the network, but it also you bring great questions and comments to the table as well that we get excited to. My final one, I have to say thank you to Tom Rule. Tom Rule III. If you are an iRacing fan, RAT Motorsports, my cousin-in-law, runs RAT Motorsports, and he every single week will run with people, does a live broadcast, live feed on his all that type. I forget. Sorry. Does a live feed on his iRacing. Follow RAT Motorsports. And if you race against him, Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast is on his side. We want to thank a couple of our sister stations. Racing Paradise, you guys are absolutely incredible. We love you. We love the shout outs. Continue connecting with us as well. NASCAR Gambling Podcast, another great sister site as well. Rod and Cody, great insight on the gambling aspects of everything NASCAR. Follow them. And my final thank you tonight. Sorry, this is like a book. I get it. But my final point or my final thank you is to all of you, the fan, that has been with us all throughout 2024. You have been absolutely remarkable. You have been so much fun to interact with. Even though we all may disagree, it's because we have so much passion for the sport. And we just continue wanting to see the sport grow. that will bring us to the checker flag on tonight's episode. So again, if you want to listen to us on YouTube, we'll have the video up on YouTube. We'll have our schedule in 2024 off season. We'll have our schedule up on Facebook at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. So please follow us. And then of course, we'll get you all geared up, get you ready again for 2025. So, all right, guys. And again, there's a lot of thank yous from the bottom of my heart. I know I missed a few. I'm sorry if I did, but you guys all have a special spot in my heart for helping us continue to grow and, of course, supporting this podcast. So this clap is for all of you. And that is it. Oh, sorry, guys. And that will be it for 2024. We're here. We finally made it. With all that being said, folks, if we don't talk to you before Thanksgiving or you don't check us out before Thanksgiving, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Have a wonderful holiday season. Again, or Christmas, Kwanzaa, anything you celebrate. If you're not going to listen to us, we'll talk with you in 2025. If you still want to listen to NASCAR content, we'll give you the schedule. Hop on board. We'll love to listen to you and be with you throughout the off season. With all that being said, good night, deuces. Checker flag officially dropped in 2024.